So by now, most of us have heard that the CIA released a document about manifestation, about reality basically being a hologram, and about all the ways that you can tap into what we'd call supernatural abilities and create your reality. And I'm going to break it down section by section with lots of detail, starting with the first thing they comment on, which is hypnosis. They describe hypnosis as a powerful tool for shifting the unconscious mind because if you can get the left brain to fall asleep, which is the logical brain, then anything you suggest goes directly into the right brain, which is more of the unconscious creative brain, and is accepted as truth. This allows you to brainwash yourself.
And the reason this is so important is because later in the document, they talk about how our belief systems are what create the projection and the hologram that allows us to perceive our reality. So essentially, if you change your beliefs, you can change the hologram you're perceiving. And hypnosis and hypnotic suggestions was one of the methods that they were using as a part of this process. So if you don't already know, the CIA released a document a while ago basically stating that the universe is a hologram, and it talks a lot about how you can access superhuman abilities as well as create your own reality based on their understanding of consciousness and reality being a projection hologram. And I'm going to go over each of it section by section in more detail. This is part 2, so if you missed part 1, go to the other video. The second technique they talk about to access higher states of consciousness is transcendental meditation. For those who are familiar with the word Kundalini, transcendental meditation is the process of the Kundalini rising, which is where in a meditative state you are focusing on drawing energy up from the base of the spine all the way into the third eye and the top of the crown. As they describe in this document, by doing this, you can have this experience where basically all the pleasure centers in your brain light up and your brain goes into perfect coherence. Why? Because you reach brain and heart coherence, which expands your electromagnetic field as well as helps you tap into the infinite possibilities of the reality. Generally speaking, and they say this in the document, getting to the state could take up to 5 years of consistent meditation practices. However, by listening to frequencies between 4 and 7 hertz, you can stimulate getting into this transcendental space much quicker. They also talk later in this document, which I'll go on later, by combining hypnosis with transcendental meditation, you can have profound impacts on the mind and body. So the CIA released a document saying the universe is a hologram and explaining how you can access superhuman abilities as well as use our understanding of this to bend or shift your reality. And I'm breaking down this document section by section. This is part 3. And this might be one of my favorite parts because it's about actually what I do in my clinical practice, which is biofeedback. And by the time I'm done this, I'm sure you'll fall in love with biofeedback too. But first, in order for you to understand what this says here, I need to explain the difference between the left and the right brain. Making this as simple as I can, your left brain is your logical thinking brain, whereas your right brain is your creative brain. Your left brain is going to be where you're thinking about like tasks like, oh, what am I going to eat now? Or, oh, I have to go pick this up later. That's very left brain. Whereas your right brain is where you can imagine things. This is really where the larger part of your subconscious resides. This is the part of where your creator resides, where you really create and manifest from, which is why a lot of the other methods we've talk about bypassing the left brain altogether, like through hypnosis or ignoring it through transcendental meditation and going right into the right brain, is because a good chunk of your power as a creator and as somebody who can shift your reality is in the right brain. But what I love about biofeedback and what they explain in this document is biofeedback actually incorporates the left brain so that you can practice and learn how to have your logical thinking brain, the one that you're operating from on a day-to-day basis, actually direct and guide the right brain, that subconscious divine creator aspect of who you are. This can create a deeper coherence within yourself because not only are you able to access, this creative brain when you're in a meditation or hypnosis, but if you could find a way to bring coherence to the logical left brain and help the logical left brain also guide and co-create with that creative right brain, then you can be accessing that power to shift your reality throughout every day, even when you're not in a trance or hypnotic state. If you want to take this even more spiritual and off what the document said, which is purely approaching it scientifically, this can be seen as the ego and the soul harmonizing so that they're co-creating, rather than having to silence the ego so the higher mind or the higher self can come in fully. You can actually have a system where the ego begins to co-create with the higher self, so to speak. Love biofeedback, highly recommend. So the CIA released a document saying the universe is a hologram, and basically the document teaches you how to access superhuman abilities as well as use your consciousness to shift your reality. I'm breaking down this document section by section, and this is part 4. This section is pretty short but very interesting because it talks about the use of the hemisync. What they noticed is by putting people through the hemisync system, they could have people access advanced states of meditation, maybe some states that would take the average meditator 20 years to reach, and they could have them reach it pretty much in 10 to 15 minutes. And these states would be where the left and right brain come into complete coherence, so much so that it seems like the whole body and the brain and heart come into coherence as well. Which, for anyone who's familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, he talks a lot about the power of brain and heart coherence. And for those who don't know, hemisyncing is when you have a different frequency playing in each ear, both between 4 and 7 hertz. And based on what they're saying here, this accelerates your meditative experience and can help you astral travel or astral project much, much quicker. So the CIA released a document basically saying the universe is a hologram and showing how people could access superhuman abilities and shift their reality through consciousness. And so I'm going over it section by section and translating it in really easy to understand language. This is part 5. If you missed the other ones, go check the other videos in this playlist. This one's going to be really short and simple, but I actually like the way they put this section called lamp versus laser. Essentially what they're saying here is that the human brain can be compared to a lamp on the average basis, where it's emitting light and heat, but it's kind of chaotic and it's going all over the place and not necessarily having a big expanded impact. Whereas under the hemisync protocol, they talk about how when the brain becomes coherent, specifically the left and right brain, and what I also believe they're talking about is brain and heart coherence, when they become coherent, essentially the human brain or the consciousness becomes like a laser where the energy can get very focused and expand very, very far. So this idea has already been shown to be true in other studies done outside the CIA. One of the best examples I can think of is Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, where basically what he talks about is when the brain and heart come into coherence, you essentially become a magnetic force field for whatever it is that you're creating in your mind. So if your brain or your consciousness is in a lamp state and you imagine your dream life and you feel good, it's going to have a little bit of an impact in the energy or the space around you. But if you first get your brain and your heart to come into coherence, and then you imagine the life you want to create, or as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, you fall in love with your future, then your energy serves as a laser, really connecting you to that potential reality. So I love this section. Highly recommend reading it yourself.